if I could just have your attention, I'm going to run through a little presentation for you. It takes about 15, 20 minutes about emerging technology trends. And hopefully you might find a nugget in here you can take home with you today. And you keep enjoying your food. But this is pretty passionate for me. I enjoy this kind of stuff. So hopefully you'll see something in here that you can take away. See if my little clicker works here. Might have to be closer to the computer. I'll just stand over here. All right, so a couple interesting statistics. Annual global IP traffic surpassed 1 billion zettabytes in 2016. It's supposed to be 2.3 zettabytes by 2020. And what that looks like as far as bytes goes, and this is per month, so that's a lot of IP traffic out there across the networks, and it's just each year it's almost doubling, tripling, that sort of thing. And video is a huge portion of that traffic. I mean, you're at 82% of all the internet traffic is video traffic. So, and it just keeps increasing. You got things like YouTube and Netflix and these sorts of things. So, the majority of that traffic is video. And here's a interesting little chart, kind of hard to read, and this is actually, I don't know, maybe from a year or so ago. So the stats might be even more than they are now, but I mean, like if you look at YouTube, for instance, users upload 48 hours of new video every minute onto YouTube, which is kind of mind-boggling. And so, where's this going as far as in corporate and enterprise markets? And that is putting video onto IT networks. It's the next logical step. There's a lot of manufacturers doing it now. You've got instead of putting in a big video switch, a big HDMI switch that's kind of limited, you're limited on how far away TVs can be and how many inputs and outputs you can have. Well, now you can put encoders and decoders on your network and have an infinitely scalable video switching network that you can constantly add sources to, constantly add displays to. So that's definitely where things are heading. The technology's getting cheaper and cheaper. It used to be that you had to pay $10,000 or $15,000 for a switch that could support this kind of thing. Now you can do it with a couple $100 switch. It's just going to keep getting more and more reasonably priced. And the reason for that is over time, the amount of bandwidth to do video streaming has actually decreased with the advancements of more advanced algorithms. And you can kind of see in '94 when MPEG-2 came out, it was consuming quite a lot of bandwidth. In 2003, H.264, you may have heard of that, came out and cut the bandwidth in half. And then H.265 actually cut that bandwidth in half. And that's actually the popular format for things like 4K and things. And then there's actually new formats coming out as well. There's an open standard called AV1 that all the big guys are backing. It used to be that companies like Apple wouldn't back some of these open standards. They would rather use like a standard like H.265, but these have royalty fees associated with them. Well, Google, Netflix, YouTube, Apple, they're all supporting this new open standard called AV1, which means you're going to start seeing it everywhere. And it's actually continues that trend line down. It's actually less bandwidth than 265. And what this means is you get larger capacity systems that are more scalable. No more distance limitations. HDMI cables can only go so long before you got to convert them to some other format and transmit them some other method. When you convert it to IP, you're kind of unlimited as far as how far you can transmit that. The next trend, obviously, the term IoT has been around for a couple years now, but it's really, the last year or so and moving into the next several years, you're going to start seeing it more and more in the corporate world where, we start having all these smart devices in rooms and conference rooms and in facilities that are talking to one another, and we're aggregating that data and actually making decisions based on that data. And you can see the trend here as well where By 2020, you're looking at 20 billion IoT devices, which is or 200 billion, I should say, which is around 26 smart objects for every human being on Earth, which is ridiculous. I mean, that means what are we gonna do with all these? And where does the market break down as of in the last year or so? So, business manufacturing 40%, healthcare 30%, retail 8, 7, 4, and so forth. And this is pretty accurate. So as far as Internet of Things and business manufacturing, obviously putting sensors on robot arms and things like that, so in advance before something fails, has been going on for a while now. In healthcare, you've got your devices that you wear on you every day. You got your watches, your health monitors, your phones that track all this and put all the data all accessible to you and even to your doctor. But where we're starting to see IoT take off in the enterprise is in smart conference rooms, smart buildings. You've got kind of an example here of a system where you've got smart scheduling panels, and they're communicating with the HVAC, and the room knows about who is in that room and how many people are even in that room. A trend we're starting to see is conferencing systems that actually don't just have occupancy sensors, but actually have cameras that are designated to recognizing who's in the room, how many people are in the room, what is the demographic makeup of the people in the room. And then all that data is collected on the back end and used to help make better decisions. How do we design a better conference room, or how do we need more conference rooms with video conferencing technology? Are people using that technology, or are they not? And so that's where that's going. Then obviously you see the little Alexa there. That's been a popular one. People are putting these in their houses, and they're kind of expecting to put these in their corporate environments too now. And one way that's happening is with companies like Amazon and Google. They're actually coming out with enterprise-grade versions of this. There's Alexa for Business now, where it makes it easy to deploy Alexa across your enterprise and integrate that assistant at your desk with your calendar, your corporate environment, but also in the conference room. So you can, tell Alexa to dial, to video call Chicago, and it'll do it for you. So, there'll be a point where, yes, you'll have a touch panel controlling all this stuff, but you may not need to touch it. And it just, what this means for you is better automation, real-time analytics, increased ease of use, more efficiency, better data to make important decisions. But what do we do with all this data? And you may have heard the term big data. It's essentially, the definition is a collection of data sets so large and complex that it becomes difficult to process using on-hand database management tools and traditional data processing applications. IoT is just one piece of that, but there's so much data out there. I mean, whether it's your CRM system or your Salesforce or your ERP, and what do you do with that data? How do you make that data work for you? And you do that with algorithms, and in particular anticipatory algorithms. So these are algorithms that take that data and present it to you in an easy to use, easy to view manner. And so, what we do at Sensory a lot of times is we'll take our digital signage platform and, we'll reach into the customer's network and pull out statistical information, on sales metrics and key performance indicators and things like that, and then display them in an easy to use method. That's creating algorithms that read this data and present it to you so you can actually make useful decisions. And what that means is, there's an ROI associated with that. There's cost reduction, faster, better decision making. Potentially you're even developing new products and services based on the data that you're receiving. The next area that's kind of always evolving is visual collaboration. So I saw the statistic somewhere. It may not be true for everybody, but in general, People tend to remember 10% of what they hear, 20% of what they read, and 80% of what they see. I know this is true for me. I'm a visual learner. I need to see things. I'm kind of hands-on. But that's interesting. And so what does that mean? Like when you're having a meeting and you're just on the phone, you know, are people on that conference call really walking away with the message that you want them to walk away with? Or do you need to put something in place that lets them see eye to eye with the people that they're communicating with, and not just a little postage stamp eye to eye, but full screen HD, you know, feeling like you're there, really talking to them. Which leads me kind of to this, what we call the spectrum of visual collaboration. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but this kind of will give you an idea of that there is really a spectrum of different technology out there that you can, that it's really inexpensive on one hand, all the way through, you know, $100,000+ rooms and immersive rooms. You know, you've got things like this Reflector app, which is an app you literally load on your computer, and it turns it into a Google Cast receiver and an AirPlay receiver. It's like $20, and you can install it on your computer and receive these things. Then there's little hardware devices like Chromecast and Apple TV, and you know, Intel Unite is starting to gain some traction. It's really good for environments like enterprise environments where you need to manage these wireless collaboration tools from a central server and offer encryption end to end. And the latest 4.0 version is one of the ones out there that's actually doing kind of the people tracking, where it knows who's in the room and how many people are in the room, and shuts the system down when no one's in the room and that sort of thing. You may have heard of We Present. That's kind of a budget-related one. Kramer Via is another one that multiple people sharing multiple content at the same time. You can push that content from the screen back to their tablet. So if you have a big room of people, it might be hard for them to see the screen. They walk in with their tablet. You can actually push the content back to them, and they can view it in real time, which is pretty handy. Crestron here has the Air Media platform, which is pretty popular. Immersive Solstice is designed for touch. You know, Extron, you know, has their wireless presenting. AMX, you know, has a great product, and Enzio and some of their other products. Christy Bria, you know, I just run through Barco ClickShare. You may have seen this. This is kind of a very simplistic one that's been very popular because it's literally a USB puck. You plug it into your computer, you press a button on the puck, and it shares your computer right up on the screen. Very simple, limited functionality. It only does one thing, but it does one thing really well, so it's been pretty popular. Newline TrueTouch, which we actually have, excuse me, we actually have out here at a demo. This is kind of just one product in a line of collaboration displays. These have really taken off in the last year or two, where you know, you've got companies like you know, Microsoft and the Surface Hub, which is actually the next one, and then the Newline, and you've got the Google Jamboard. All these, you know, Cisco Spark Board. These are all kind of companies competing for this market with these multi kind of user collaboration displays, and there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. You know, if you're in a Cisco Spark environment, the Spark board's great. If you're in a Google environment, Google's great. If you're in a Microsoft Office environment, the Surface is great. The Newline's kind of unique in that it's a little more agnostic because it can run any software you might have, whether it be Zoom or something else. And then there's the you may have heard of Prism, but this is kind of, you know, there's a couple manufacturers out there doing this, but this is your kind of more immersive room environment where you might have multiple displays. It's multi-touch. You can have a lot of content on the screen at one time and share that content with multiple people. So let's touch on just these collaboration displays. I kind of already touched on them, but here's some examples of the different ones. There's also kind of a new trend as far as all-in-one conference rooms. You know, these are really easy to use kind of conference rooms in a box where you've got a touch panel, you've got a speaker, microphones, conferencing software. You just plug this thing in. You got a camera on top of your display. You can wirelessly present. You You know, Amex has a product as well that's really popular. As far as display technology trends, there's, you know, obviously things are always getting less expensive. Video walls are getting bigger, higher resolution, that sort of thing. You know, we're going to 4K, even 8K. You may have heard of OLED. That's a pretty big one recently. You know, there's direct view LED touch displays. So these are, you know, traditionally direct view LED is the big, you know, the big outdoor LED displays that you see, you know, on the side, you know, like when you're driving down the road, the big billboards. But they're making these things higher and higher resolution for where you're actually starting to install these into corporate environments and training environments where you need a big, bright display. And, you know, you can put touch overlays on these things. Pretty powerful stuff. And you can go really big. So, you know, here's an example of video from Infocom a year or so ago where it's just a big, bright display. Another trend that we just saw at CES this year is Samsung showed off a what they call micro LED, which is a 5 by 5 inch little panel. I mean, the thing is, you know, literally 5 inches by 5 inches, but it combines the quality of OLED. So the quality being that it's, you know, super high res and super high contrast ratio, lots of really deep blacks and darks and really bright whites, but then it's kind of infinitely scalable. You know, this example is a 146-inch display that has the quality of OLED, but you can customize and make kind of as big as you want. Something to kind of keep an eye on that might take off here soon. Another thing to keep in mind when you start talking about display resolutions is, which is kind of interesting, is where is the benefit of 4K, right? Everything's kind of going to 4K, and it's going to kind of be the default standard, if you will, for a lot of the panels that are out there. But where do you actually benefit from that? Like, if you look at this kind of purple area for the benefit of 4K, and you look at the screen size, I always like to say, okay, what if you had a 90-inch 4K display? That's a really big 4K display. At what point do you really not benefit from having 4K anymore because the human eye can't distinguish that resolution anymore? And that's at about 10 feet. So if you're beyond 10 feet from a 90-inch display, you start not being able to even realize it's 4K anymore. So, and that's surprising to a lot of people, but that's just the way the human eye works. So it's not to say you shouldn't do 4K all the time, but do it where it makes sense. And a lot of times where it makes sense is when you're really close to the display. So maybe in a scenario where you might have a touch display where you need to stand a foot or two right in front of the display and touch it, and you need that resolution, that really high pixel pitch. That, you know, in those scenarios, that makes a lot of sense. Another cool thing here, I've got a little bit of a video, but this is translucent OLED. So unlike translucent LCD, which requires a backlight in order to see it, this actually, the pixels themselves illuminate. And when they're not illuminated, they're translucent. So you can kind of see through that display to the case behind it. So you can imagine in retail environments, you're going to start seeing a lot more of this. All right, so VR, AR, and MR, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, you know, lots of little acronyms, but really there's kind of benefits to each of these. And just to describe, I'll run through them real quick just to kind of give you the difference so you can understand what some of the differences are. You know, virtual reality is where it kind of takes over your environment. We've got virtual reality right out here in HTC Vive on demo. This really, you know, tricks your brain into thinking that you're in this environment. And so, you know, you put somebody in this environment where they're perfectly safe, and now they feel like they're going to fall off this plank if they, you know, if they make the wrong step to save the little kitten or whatever. And this is, you know, it triggers something deep in your brain to make you think that, okay, you are in this environment, and you know, like a survival instinct kicks in. And that can be powerful from an immersive standpoint. We're actually working on a project right now for a large insurance company where they want to kind of get across, bring empathy into the call center so that people that are taking these calls from folks that just had a tragedy, you know, they just got in a really bad accident or their house burned down. They don't want these people to be desensitized, you know, to that information. So we're shipping out kits of virtual reality goggles where they go through a training simulation and actually be in a virtual environment with that accident or with that house burning or, you know, whatever the environment might be, so they can, when they're taking that virtual call, they're kind of getting trained on being a little bit more empathetic when they're on the phone. And, you know, talk about being able to, you couldn't do that with a projector and a screen trying to show, you know, teach somebody that, you know, but immersing them in that's a viable option. You know, you can actually affect someone and change their behaviors. Kind of the next stage with where VR is going is social VR. So it kind of takes VR to and Facebook and mashes them up, if you will, where these people could be in virtually different environments, but all working on the same project or playing the same game or collaborating on the same virtual you know, device or whatever it might be that they're developing, and talking to one another. AR, you know, got its start. You know, people started hearing about AR with Pokemon Go, but you know, in our environment with corporate, you know, AR is more of a so augmented reality. It's where you're overlaying computer graphics on your real world. You know, like flying drones is a good example where you can see the drone's point of view, but it doesn't completely block your vision. You can also see the drone in the sky. This application, we actually put these in the field with technicians so they can call back to a customer support place that might have an expert or specialist, you know, in a help desk, and that person in the help desk can then see what that technician sees. That technician's hands are free because they're just wearing these goggles or the glasses. They're able to see schematic information. They can be working on an object. You know, we did this for some oil riggers in Texas where they had guys go out on site that had to fix something. They're able to, in real time, instead of taking a picture and sending it back, they're able to real-time troubleshoot whatever it might be with an expert that might be miles away. And then MR is kind of a variant of AR, so mixed reality kind of takes AR to the next level. So this is, we've got a Microsoft HoloLens out here as well. And what this does is you still see your real environment. It's not covering your eyes completely, but it's putting computer imagery over your environment, but that computer imagery knows about your environment, right? So this device is actually scanning your environment in 3D, and it knows about the floors and tables and ceilings and walls. So you can actually pin things up on the wall, you know, or bring in holographic imagery, or even do interactive video conferencing with someone that might be on their tablet, and they can actually annotate on your real environment. So, you know, he's on his computer drawing, but she's seeing it in 3D overlaid on the object that she's working on in the real world. And this actually works. We can demo it right out there. It's pretty powerful stuff. An application that, you know, might be a little more practical would be in a surgical environment where you might be doing surgical training. We were working with a company to allow surgeons to learn a new procedure, and being able to wear an AR headset and see X-ray information hovering above the patient, and actually watch procedural things and pull up videos and have interactive video with a training, you know, someone that's training you. There's just unbelievable value in something like that, where their hands are free, everything is gesture-based, you know, they're scrubbed in. They don't need to touch a screen or interact with anything physically. It's all gestures. Pretty powerful. This is some new AR glasses. You know, this is just to show that things are they're shrinking the technology down. This was just shown at CES this year. We've worked with Vuzix in the past. This is just basically glasses that are starting to look like normal glasses. Not quite there yet, but, you know, they're getting smaller and smaller. You know, Apple has a patent on some glasses that I'm sure will be like really trendy, and they'll wirelessly communicate to your iPhone, and your iPhone will do all the processing for you. You don't need the processing in the glasses. It'll just be wireless to your phone. Magic Leap, these guys got crazy, huge investments from Google, and because of the technology that they were developing, they haven't announced a whole lot publicly other than they have a new method for, kind of projecting this stuff into your eyeball, and the lens itself is super small and thin, and it's supposed to kind of be the next generation of AR, if you will. And then there's actually companies that are working on contact lenses that you can just wear, and it kind of projects the information into your vision, and you're just walking around with like a heads-up display, which is a little creepy but kind of cool at the same time. And what's this mean? It's better decision making, hands-free interactivity, maybe cost-effective prototyping. But the key is that it's an active versus passive experience. So instead of showing slides or trying to teach a class by using a video projector, now your class is engaged. I mean, they're truly engaged. If you had a classroom full of VR headsets or AR headsets, and these kids students are putting these things on and being completely immersed in those environments, I mean, there's just no doubt that things are heading in that direction. And I really appreciate your time. If you have any questions, feel free to come up here and let's talk. Thanks.